Okay, welcome to another episode of Soccer Talk. I'm Coach Deaton.
Coach Kamei.
We're very excited for our show today. Just for those 10 viewers that we have that are actually viewing us, religiously. We won't be having another show for a little over a month, so pay attention. We got a lot to cover. First thing we're going to talk about, AC Milan was banned from Champions League and Europa League for one season due to FFP, which is financial fair play. And the definition of financial fair play is it was established to prevent professional clubs from spending more than they earn in pursuit of success, and in so getting into financial problems which might threaten the long-term survival. So in layman's terms, basically, they don't want the clubs to fold. So this is actually a good rule, regulation.
Exactly.
Do you agree?
Uh-huh. Well, and it's just trying to keep teams from trying to cheat and get around the rules.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw what happened to Juventus a few years ago, where they were not only banned from their division, they got dropped down to second, and they had to stay there for a couple of years before they were able to come up. And I think they took the championship away also.
I don't know if you remember. I think so.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to kind of put that out there because it was brand new soccer news.
Okay, and next we're going to talk about the manager for Real Madrid, Julen Lopetegui. He was announced as the appointee for the Real team after the Spanish national coach got sacked. He was, I guess he was fired because he took the Real Madrid.
He took the Real Madrid, and so Spain sacked him.
Right.
Which is, in my opinion, is ridiculous. You should be happy that people want to move on. And even though he was coaching the national team, to sack him before the tournament, it's unbelievable.
Exactly. And you're not even talking like a month. This is like days right before the World Cup started. I mean, and Spain got lucky not only because of the talent, but because of the coach.
Yeah.
I mean, the coach has been doing a great job so far. I don't know if you guys know who he is, Hierro, which he played for Barca for many years, and he won a few championships with Barcelona. But still, they got lucky. Yeah. It's not something that you do right before the World Cup starts.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Okay, so we also want to mention USA, Canada, and Mexico are going to host the 2026 World Cup. So here's the question. Usually when a country hosts, like Russia's hosting, they qualify automatically. They don't have to go through a qualifying where they got to play all the teams in the region and be in that top 3 to get into the World Cup. So how are they going to fix this? Who's going to end up qualifying automatically for this tournament?
And especially when you have three nations that are in the same confederation, CONCACAF, now you have 3. If they go automatically, then what happens to the other teams? I mean, do they still fight for a spot? I mean, we know that there are going to be 48 teams, so hopefully that means they get at least a couple more spots.
Right.
Because if not, what's the point of them trying out if there's not going to be one?
Right, because if you look at the CONCACAF Confederation for Russia's World Cup, Mexico, Costa Rica, and Panama all got in, so that's only 3.
Right.
So if you're going to let all 3 of these countries in,
what happens to the rest of the countries?
I mean, it just wouldn't be fair. And that question hasn't been answered yet as far as we can find out.
Right, because we don't know if all 3 teams will get in automatically.
And if they make it so that, every team now has to qualify, even the host countries, that wouldn't be fair.
Right.
Because in the past, that's not been the case.
Exactly. And also, one of the things that, I don't know if you remember this far back in '94 when we had the World Cup, people talked about, well, why in the U.S. when the country's so big and people are going to be traveling so much? Well, now it's not just the United States. Now you got to go to Canada and Mexico.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got to talk about getting visas for everybody. You know, with the immigration problems we've been having in our country. Now you got to let all these people in.
Yeah, and the plan is they're going to play 10 games in Mexico, 10 in Canada, and then the rest will be played in the U.S. And that includes all the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the finals. So I mean, it's great that this has never been done before. Three countries
We had
hosting.
two, but now there were three.
So it is exciting, but it's also bringing up a whole lot of logistic issues and travel issues.
And you know what? I was watching this interview before a couple of days ago about the guy who blew the whistle. Well, I guess he's one of the guys who got started with the FIFA things that happened, the illegal things that went on with giving Russia the World Cup, and then Qatar and all the illegal things. He wrote a book called Red Card. And then if you guys get a chance to read it, he talks about, everything that went on and how America was involved and why, and then who were the whistleblowers for this. Because now you're looking at, okay, the Russian World Cup, we're already here. So, he talks about everything that they did illegally to get the World Cup. Now Qatar, what happens? Are they still going to get it? There's been problems ever since they got it. And then with everything going on, with all the legality that's going on with FIFA, we still don't know if they're still going to get it. They're getting ready for it, but is there things? I mean, what's going to happen? Are they still going to get it? Do they still get to host it? And now, why are we getting it? Where people were saying, well, Morocco, wasn't ready for it. Maybe they weren't big enough. But not only do we get it, but they give it to 3 countries.
Right.
So what does that say?
Well, and you also have the question with Qatar is timing. Because normally the World Cup's in the summer, but it's so hot there that people are saying they want to do it in the winter. Well, everybody's in league.
Exactly. Not only are they in league, but then the vacation time, people take their vacation around the World Cup when it comes to the World Cup. So because they can travel, but now you're going to be traveling during the holidays?
Yeah, that's going to be crazy.
That's not going to happen. So it's going to be an interesting World Cup. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, so what we're going to start talking about now, of course, World Cup. It's been a super exciting World Cup if you've been watching.
A lot of drama.
Today is the last day of the group stages, like third games of the group stages. So we have almost all the next round of 16 games decided. Okay, so we'll get to that. But the first thing I want to mention is, Coach, I don't know if you heard this, Manchester City has 16 players in the World Cup. That's amazing. More than any other national team out there. More than any club that's using. So it's only obvious that's why they were so good.
They were unstoppable.
Yeah, but I'm curious, how do you think that's going to affect their summer program?
Right.
With so many players not being able to be there until later.
And everybody's signing up. Clubs are signing people. Back up and down throughout the summer, while everybody else is getting playing the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean it's great for Man City in that sense, and that's why their team's so strong.
Right.
But from a coaching standpoint, if I'm coaching a club, I want to get my players back, as soon as possible.
And one of the things that we were talking about earlier is how exhausted the players are right now at this World Cup already. Once Game 3 comes up, the players are starting to feel, the fatigue on that.
Right.
Because they finished, and then they have all these other tournaments before the World Cup.
Right.
So, all right. So let's move on to the first group. I guess Russia and Spain. How did Russia look with the first? They got 5 great goals versus Saudi. Then they got 3 goals versus Egypt. And everybody's going, great, they're doing awesome. It's Russia, it's the home team.
Yeah.
Man, they get to play a team that's been there, that's one of the favorites, and they lose 3-0.
I mean, it obviously Saudi Arabia and Egypt aren't the strongest. I thought Egypt would give them a little bit harder time than Saudi Arabia. But I mean, they went out with a bang to play their 8 goals. That was more than any other team had done in 2 games. Right. So that was really exciting to see, and I was pulling for them. But then Uruguay just, maybe it's the tired thing like you were saying.
Right,
And they
because
just-
it's taking a toll on their bodies.
I mean, we know Uruguay's a better team than Saudi Arabia and Egypt, so.
But they also played 2 other games too.
Exactly,
So,
exactly. So that's how Russia got through it. Now, what do we have for Spain?
oh yeah, Spain, they tied Portugal, was probably one of the best matches so far in the World Cup, right? 3-3
Yeah.
with Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, scoring a hat trick.
It's exactly 3 goals. Then they beat Iran 1-0, and then tied Morocco 2-2, which was, to me, I was hoping for Morocco. They looked like a good team, so I was hoping that they were going to move up. So I guess it's going to be Spain and Portugal moving up.
Yeah, so, I mean, who do you think? Obviously, Spain should beat Russia.
Yeah,
I mean, even though Spain didn't do that great against Iran, and obviously they tied Morocco, I still think they're just way too good for Russia.
yeah, because if you think about it, even with the new coach, the coach doesn't know the players as well as everybody else because he's only been there for a few days technically. Then he hasn't even been there with the group for a month.
Yeah.
But the talent that he's got
Is
helps a
getting
lot.
through, yeah.
Getting all those players to be with you. So I'm taking Spain. I think Spain should be able to beat Russia,
I agree.
even though they're the host team.
So our next round of 16, we've got Uruguay versus Portugal. So here's how Uruguay got in. They beat both Egypt and Saudi Arabia 1-0, and then demolished Russia 3-0, as we had said earlier. And then Portugal, they tied Spain 3-3, as we mentioned, and then they beat Morocco 1-0, and then they tied Iran 1-1. So again, the games seemed to get more difficult as they went on. Honestly, this game is really hard to call. I think if Ronaldo's on, like he has been for the most part, I think Portugal's got a little slight advantage over Uruguay in this game.
I'm thinking they're in the same boat. It's very close to me because they have the same amount of support team. Maybe Uruguay has a little bit more as far as stars because they have Cavani, they have Suarez, and they have Godin, and they're keeping Muslera. So in that case, maybe Uruguay has a slight edge on Portugal. But then Portugal has Ronaldo,
Yeah.
And then Quaresma, a
Yeah.
player that is that old, who's played other World
35,
Cups, has the
yeah.
experience, was able to score in the last game. So Portugal's still there, so I'm still giving it to Uruguay, but it's going to be very, very close.
And his goal was sweet.
Yes.
Bending it from the outside with his right foot. Just
Exactly.
into the upper corner was nice. Okay, so Coach, we got our next one.
Next one, we have France versus Argentina.
Ooh, this
who I'm
is-
supporting on this one. Argentina barely got there. So let's talk about France first. They beat Australia 2-1 on the first game. Then they beat Peru 1-0, only 1-0 though, that's the thing. And then, of course, they tied Denmark 0-0, so there was no score there. So the weapons that I talked about earlier in France have not been there.
Yeah, France has definitely not played the way people expect them to play.
Right, so maybe this is the round where they need to step it up.
Yeah.
Because they haven't shown what they have. They have a lot of talent. They just hasn't shown up yet. And then in Argentina, they tied Iceland 1-1 on their first game. Then they lose to Croatia 3-0, which, even though the score was 3-0, the last 2 goals came towards the end of the game. But still, it's Croatia. Croatia played a great game.
Yeah.
They went at it, and then they didn't let Messi do anything in that game.
No.
He was so frustrated. He couldn't score. He couldn't do anything. And then they come back and they beat Nigeria.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was barely a 2-1.
Right.
So they barely made it, even though they had scored their 2 goals first. It was a very close game.
Argentina and France, obviously, this could be a semifinal or a final, technically. I mean, those are 2 big countries. Again, this one's a difficult, when we get to these stages, some of these games are really hard to choose who's going to make it. And honestly, the way Argentina's been playing, if France can just up their level, just a tad, I think they're going to be able to take them. Because I think overall, they're younger.
Right.
They probably have more energy, and
Well, if it goes in the long run, where the game goes into, overtime or extra time, it's still, they have the advantage.
Which, for those of you that aren't big soccer fans, just to let you know, so in the group stages, you're allowed to have a tie. And you get 1 point for a tie, 3 points for a win. But in these games, it's a win and you go on, or you lose and you go
You're
home.
out.
And so if you get through the 90 minutes and you end up still having a tie, they play 2 15-minute overtimes. If it's still tied at that point, then you go to PKs, which is a very intense, exciting thing to watch. As a coach, sucks to lose in a PK. It's fun to win in it, but
Right, and it's usually not the better team that wins.
Exactly.
And so, what was I going to say on that one? No, I guess we can go on to the next one.
Okay, so our next game, we've got Croatia versus Denmark. Now, Croatia's just looking great. So this is how they got there. They beat Nigeria 2-0, Argentina 3-0, and then Iceland 2-1. I was kind of pulling for Iceland in this one, even though I like Croatia, just because I like Iceland. So, they're on fire right now, Croatia, and I wouldn't want to face them. And to Denmark, not so great. Denmark, they beat Peru 1-0. They tied Australia 1-1 and France 0-0. So Denmark's really going to struggle, I think, against Croatia. I think Croatia's going to take this.
And to me, Croatia had a harder time. I mean, a harder group.
Yes.
They had Argentina, they had Iceland, which, came up really strong, even though they finished with 1 point. It was still a tough team to beat. I mean, look at they tied Argentina.
Right. And then Nigeria is very athletic.
Exactly. So they had it harder than Denmark.
Right.
Denmark, they had Peru and Australia. I mean, the only tough team that they really faced was France.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see if Croatia can continue that run.
Exactly. And the next one, we got Brazil versus Mexico, right? Brazil tied Switzerland in their first game 1-1, which we know how the Swiss are doing. They beat Costa Rica 2-0. Well, Costa Rica wasn't there the way they were in the last World Cup. And then they beat Serbia 2-0. And then Mexico, well, how did they get there? They beat Germany 1-0, which was the big upset of the year.
Yeah.
And then they beat South Korea 2-1, which is another close game.
Yeah.
South Korea. And then they lose badly to Sweden in the last game 3-0. Now, again, this is another one where the goals came at the end, but still, just because you beat Germany, the world champs, doesn't mean you gotta lay low and then not play as hard on all the rest of your games. They beat Korea, which was a tough team to beat.
Yeah.
But then with Sweden, they had no chance.
Yeah, and the second half, Sweden just pounced on them and looked a much better, more fit team. Mexico did not look good at all. So, I think, the history is Brazil's going to win this, and I definitely think Brazil's going to. I'd be shocked if they didn't. Not that Mexico can't challenge them. I think Mexico got lucky here, though, because if Mexico would have had to play either Switzerland, if they would have won the group and had to play Switzerland, that's like playing Sweden. So they may have not done as well. So I think at least them having to play Brazil, they're playing a team that suits more their style.
And the one thing I want to say about this one is Mexico and Brazil, they tend to respect each other a lot. Mexico used to be one of those teams that sometimes they respected Brazil too much.
Yeah.
But there was a time when they beat him in the finals in the World Cup in the under-21. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I remember
this
that.
was a few years ago, and this is one of the big moments for Mexico, beating Brazil in a final, something that they've never done.
Right.
They've never been to a finals, even though this wasn't the normal World Cup. It was still a big tournament.
Yeah.
So that's something that they have going for themselves. But again, talk about fatigue, it's starting to show, because that's how, when they played Sweden, it showed a lot.
Right.
Sweden was more physical, they were very athletic throughout the game, and I think that's what gave them the victory.
Yeah. Okay, so our next one, we've got Sweden versus Switzerland. So here's how Sweden got in. They beat South Korea 1-0, and then they lost to Germany 2-1 in an exciting last-second goal, and then they stomped Mexico 3-0. So that's how Sweden got in. And then Switzerland, they tied Brazil 1-1. and then they beat Serbia 2-1, and then they tied Costa Rica 2-2. So Switzerland barely got in here. Although I do think these two teams match up well, just like Brazil and Mexico. I think they're the same style of players, and so it's going to be interesting. I'm pulling for Sweden. That's my heritage, so I would want them over Switzerland. That's who I would go with.
And you're right, they're two evenly matched teams that have this, like you said, they do play the same style. So that's a toss-up on me. I like both teams. I think Sweden probably has a little bit more talent, but Switzerland has a lot of heart. I mean, they played their hearts out there, especially when they tied Brazil.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a good matchup. And then, so now we move on to the ones where we don't know yet, because as we're taping this show, the games are going on right now. So Belgium.
See how dedicated we are to you fans out there? We're not even watching the games right now. I'm DVRing them so I can watch them all. But
all right, so if Belgium, we think Belgium is going to go up to probably finish first in their group. If they do finish first, have to go against the second place team in the H group, which we don't know who that would be. That could be any of those teams. There's Colombia, Japan,
and Senegal.
Senegal. Poland doesn't have a chance on that one because they have 2 losses. And so, who will they play? That's depending on how they finish. So if they finish first, they may be playing either Japan or Senegal or Colombia, and the same thing if they finish second. So we don't know yet.
But Belgium, they look good. Their first 2 games, they scored 8 goals total.
Right.
And they're looking healthy. They're looking strong. So it's tough. Them and England, which is our next one, we know England's going through. They're both playing each other today to see who wins. So again, if England finishes first, they'll play second from Group H, which is either Colombia, Japan, or Senegal. Or if they finish second, then they'll play the first of those 3 teams.
And what's funny on these 2 teams, England and Belgium? They both scored the same amount of goals, and they both had the same amount of goals scored against them.
That's right. England
8 and 2.
Yeah, England won against Tunisia 2-1 their first game, so they didn't look that good. But then they just destroyed Panama 6-1. So, again, these 2 teams are like Switzerland and Sweden. They match up really well against each other. So this last group game is going to be interesting to see who can top it.
And as much as we like Belgium, who we're rooting for on this one.
Yeah. Oh, England.
Right.
England World Cup. You probably can't see it. It's real tiny, but it's there.
Okay. And then let's move on to Germany. All right, so Germany lost to Mexico on their first game, 1-0. Then come back and win versus Sweden 2-1, so that was the great game.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about coming back. You lose to Mexico in your opening game, you're the world champion, and everybody's down, everybody's thinking, what's going on with Germany? Now you come back, Sweden's beating you 1-0, you come back and score 2 goals in the second half.
And that last goal that they scored, which was in like the 94th minute or something like that, right before the game ended, was a free kick from outside the box. And Kamei and I were texting each other, and he's like, why were there only 2 people in the wall?
Exactly. My point always.
Yeah.
You need to have more people on that wall.
Yeah, and it was from the side. And so my thinking was, well, the goalie probably didn't think he was going to shoot it because it wasn't indirect. And he probably just figured, being at the last part of the game, he's just going to pop it in the middle and hope someone can get a ricochet. But he didn't. He shot it and scored.
But you know what? That's also like old school mentality, because nowadays you can't afford to do mistakes like that. You have to know that there's a chance that they're going to take a shot.
Right.
And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
So that puts them 2-1 on that game, but then they come back and they lose to South Korea in a must-win game. And not only did they lose 2-0 because if you watch the game, you saw Neuer come out, and then at the end they got
that breakaway.
Talk about risking it all. Comes out, and then they have a breakaway, and then they score a second goal, and the champs are out of the World Cup. Now, here's an interesting point that I wanted to bring up, and I talked to you about this before.
In 2006, Italy won.
We're the champs. right? 2010, they're out in the first round.
Group stage.
They didn't make it. So in 2010, Spain wins that World Cup, right? Now we go to 2014, and now Spain's out on the first round
First
also. And then in 2014, where Spain was out on the first one, Germany wins it again.
Right.
And then now we're back in 18, and they're out on the first
group
round
stage.
again.
Yeah.
So it's funny how that works out, but it's been happening since '06. You know, the winning team has been ousted on the first round of the next coming up World Cup.
They're cursed.
Exactly.
You win the World Cup, might as well not even bother showing up for the next one because you're going to go out in the group stage.
And you have to qualify. It's not like the old days where if you were the
Right.
champs, you were automatically in like the host team.
Right.
Now you have to qualify.
And so with Germany being out, obviously that's huge. So the question is their coach going to stay? I mean, this was his third World Cup, which is rare.
Right.
You're lucky if you get 2 World Cups as a coach. So to get 3, you think that they'll sack him? Do you think he'll retire from it? What do you think?
Maybe I'm thinking that they may be thinking there's time for a change.
Yeah.
Because he did give him a World Cup. They couldn't win the Euro Cup, the Europa, or what do you call it?
The European.
The European Cup. So, you know, whereas like Spain, they won it right and before and right after they won the World Cup.
Right.
So there was a little bit more success there. With him, one World Cup and that was it. So I don't know. To me, I guess if I'm the owner, or not the owner, but the administration, the Federation of Germany, maybe it's time to look elsewhere.
Yeah, and you know, you think about that's 12 years he's been with them. So it's probably time for a change. I'm not saying that they should have let him go before this World Cup, but definitely I think there's a time now. You got to get some fresh legs in there.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to talk, and we're just talking about a couple of big teams. The next team we want to talk about, which we mentioned, is Argentina. Okay, Messi, supposed to be the best player in the world, has only scored 1 goal in 3 games. Okay, now, there's always this controversy between Ronaldo and Messi. And Messi, when he gets with the national team, just doesn't play the way he does with Barcelona. You know, and it's not that the Argentina team doesn't have talent, whereas Barcelona has obviously tons of talent. But the thing is, you know, Ronaldo doesn't have that talent around him on the Portugal team as he does with his club team, but yet he still shines on the national level.
Right.
So in my opinion, I would have to say Ronaldo's better than Messi because of that. You know, a lot of people would obviously disagree. And a lot of people don't like Ronaldo because he's got that prima donna attitude. But as a soccer player, I would say because of what he's done with the national team and what he's done with his club team, he has to be considered better than Messi. What do you think?
Well, with me, of course, you know, I support Argentina, and I like Messi. I don't like Maradona, even though he was a great player.
Oh, yeah.
But, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But, you know, you have to consider everything that Messi's done too.
Right.
You know, Messi may not have shown up yet at this World Cup. One thing is something that happened to Maradona too in '86 in Mexico. It's they put a player on him that would never let him go.
Right.
And that's been happening with Messi at this World Cup.
Right.
Now, especially on that last game, the last couple of games, somebody, which is smart, is what you need to do. Put somebody on the best player and don't let him go. So Messi's getting frustrated because he's not being able to score. Of course, he scored that great goal with the right footed, so that's what shows you how great of a player he is. Technically, he was the one responsible for the team going into the finals in the last World Cup, which Portugal was out on the early in that World Cup. Also, Messi was responsible for qualifying to this last World Cup. The last 2 games, they were must-wins for them, and Messi just took over.
Yeah.
So in that point, you can see where Messi can also do things that, you know, Ronaldo can do or even better. So that's why I like Messi a lot. You may not see it because he hasn't shined the way Ronaldo has been shining in this World Cup, you know, with those great goals that he scored, which I don't take anything away from him. They're both great players. They're different players. Personally, one is more of a scorer and the other one's more of a player, leader, you know, taking control, you know. So I see 2 sides, 2 different players. I like them both. I like Messi more in certain ways. I like Ronaldo in certain ways where he's better. But to me, Messi's still the better player. And, that's just my opinion. So I don't like it when they when they compare him to Maradona, not because of the talent that Maradona had, but because everything else outside of the sport.
Yeah.